before I go into my publishing story, I thought I'd first kind of talk about the three major ways to go about publishing. There are kind of three major paths you can choose. This is for novels, of course, because that's my area of expertise. But the first way is the traditional way, and that is to find an agent. You can go about this in several different ways. Online, there are different ways to connect with agents. You can also contact different publishing companies and get a list of possible agents and contact info. Another way, Writer's Market, checking out that book will definitely give you some good leads. I personally didn't start out with an agent. I don't have an agent, although I am currently looking for one. It's something that I decided I would kind of grow into, and I'll talk more about that later in my reasoning for that. But agents do take money. You do have to pay your agent. Often an agent will make a deal that they will just take a percentage of your royalties and not like ask up front for money, but that really just depends on the agent. And so that's a little bit about finding an agent. That's the traditional way, and it's really the only way if you want to hit a really prestigious company. They won't just look at you unless you have an agent there saying, no, look at this, it's really good. So that is the traditional way to go about publishing. The second way is to self-publish, and I'm not talking about like a vanity press where you pay the money, get 100 copies, give it to all your family, and it ends there. I'm talking about especially ebooks, publishing digital copies of your book. This is definitely a new way to go about publishing. It's really just caught on the past few years. I've talked with many authors who self-published, many that have left their companies to do self-publishing because they feel they can definitely make more money, and they've kind of learned the ropes of publishing, so they kind of know what they're doing. They don't feel like they're completely in over their heads because publishing is kind of scary. And if you do this self-publishing, you're mostly on your own. In talking with other authors, I've done book signings with authors who have done this. One of the easiest ways to go about this online self-publishing is to go through somewhere like Amazon. You can do a print on demand and get everything set up. Obviously, one of the perks is you have full control over your book. You get to design the cover, you get the last say for every scene in the book. It's all up to you. But that's also one of the downsides, is it's all up to you. No matter which road you pick to go to publication, you're going to have to do a lot of work. You're going to have to do a lot of the marketing. You're going to have to go speak at different places. So if you have that idea of if you can be a writer and be a hermit, it doesn't work. I tried, it doesn't work. And so, but self-publishing it, you'll definitely feel that pressure a lot more. But it is, you can definitely make good money. I've done book signings with self-published authors who, they make tons of money on their self-published books. And a lot of that is due to the fact that they are really good at online marketing and networking. That's definitely the tool you're going to have to use because your book isn't as likely to get into libraries or different schools like that. So you'll have to be really good at social networking, which we'll also talk about later. So the third way to publish is to solicit publishers on your own. And this is what I chose to do. And in doing this, I just have a couple cautions. Number one, make sure that whatever company you are sending your manuscript to actually is accepting manuscripts that are unsolicited, which means you don't have an agent. And that's really easy to find out because all publishing companies that are worth anything have a website. And on that website, they will have a page with submission guidelines, what you have to do in order for them to even consider your book for publication. So those are all really easy to find. The biggest drawback with soliciting a publisher is, number one, you will often end up in the slush pile, which means it may not even get looked at, which is a fear. Another concern is, how do you find a publisher to solicit it? An agent knows, what companies are looking for what kind of genre, but how do you know? And this is what I did. I went to my bookshelf, and I went to the library, and I went to bookstores, and I found exactly on the shelf where, in my mind, I could envision my book sitting. So I found the right genre, even down to like alphabetically, this is where I would sit. And I started pulling out books around that area, and I started looking at their publisher, and I started making a list of these publishing companies. And then I went home, and I started Googling these publishing companies, and I found their websites, and I got on, and slowly I started crossing them off the list. And I found the ones that would accept unsolicited manuscripts. And I thought this was a great idea, because it means that these publishing companies are real, that they are able to get their books out there where people can see them. And that's one of the other pitfalls of doing this on your own and soliciting a publisher is, what if you find a publisher that only releases books in Utah? You know, is your career really going to take off? And so some of these are these considerations. You have to be really careful, but you can totally do it. And there are plenty of essays, articles that you can read that will help give you information on this. So once you find a group of publishers you want to look at, and you've researched, yeah, they're accepting manuscripts, this is the genre you're going in, then you have the hard part of actually sending it out there. And I've found that this is really hard to do because you always find a reason to delay. You're like, oh, I'm going to revise it one more time. I'm going to go through one more edit. And you find yourself sitting there for like 3 hours looking at the first sentence going, do I really want that comma? Or do I take that comma out? I don't know. And it's really hard to tell yourself it's done because you're all writers, you know, it's never done. You're always going back. You're constantly changing things. To the point that I haven't ever dared read my books cover to cover now that they're out because I know I'm going to be like, crap, there's a comma there. I don't want a comma there. And so it's really hard, but you have to hit this point where you tell yourself, it's a hard and honest conversation you have to have with yourself and say, yes, this is a manuscript that's ready to go. I found personally, I've had to have somebody else help say, yeah, it's ready. And so I would suggest finding, you know, whether you're in a writing group or you just find that buddy who doesn't care about reading it a million times. That would be my sister over there, Kimberly. She read it a million times. My mom read it a million times. Moms help. I mean, maybe they don't give me like the critical feedback, but they're always like, it's beautiful, and you're like, I hate that. So it really helps. Anyway, but once you reach that point and you're like, okay, it's ready, you're going to find yourself going, well, I don't feel like going to the post office today, I'll go tomorrow. And you keep putting it off. And you're like, really, I don't have the right packaging, I'm just going to wait. But no, you have to go through with it, you have to send it in. And you have to be honest with yourself that the reason you're delaying is you don't want a rejection letter. You have to be honest with yourself, that's what it is. You don't want a publishing company to say, this is terrible, why, go change your career, find something else because you might not a writer. You don't want that to happen. Well, I can tell you right now, that doesn't happen. They do not say that in rejection letters, at least that I've gotten. It's more of a really polite, we don't want to publish it at this time. So it's a lot easier and nicer than you think. They don't bite, they don't haunt you. You can put them on the wall if you want. I never have. But I do carry around in a binder sometimes. Anyway, so rejection letters are not that scary. My first rejection letter I got when I was 18, and I put it off a long time. Like Jessica had mentioned in my bio, I've always been interested in publishing, becoming an author, but it was something that I had a lot to overcome before I got to that point that I was willing to send anything out. And I remember when I was 16 and really started researching publishing, I turned off the computer and said, I am going to go rethink my life and find something else to do because I don't want to do this. Maybe I could do professional rock collecting because that was one of the only things I did. But rejection letters are not that bad. And the way that I've come to deal with rejection and think about it is the day I stopped getting rejection letters is the day I stopped trying to get published. And if you think about it, it makes sense. And so in a way, I was almost excited when I got my first rejection letter. I mean, yeah, I was kind of like, well, that's sad, and I ate lots of ice cream. But it's okay, because I'd finished a manuscript, I had sent it out, and I had been rejected. Awesome. I could try again. And it gets easier over time. So just keep at it. Don't worry about rejection. It happens to us all. You'll be okay. And so with Seers, I normally write fantasy, sci-fi. That's more of what I do. It was kind of weird when I got the idea for Seers because I had never written anything in which there are cell phones or cars. I'm used to castles and swords and dragons. And so it was really hard when I got the inspiration for it because I was like, well, that's a nice idea. Someone else should write that. I really don't want to. But you know, when inspiration calls, you really can't ignore it. And so I wrote these books, and it was during the summer of 2010, and I had drafts of all three finished in a summer. I had nothing else to do. I was crazy. I don't recommend it. 3 novels in the summer, not a good idea. But I was just, you know, kind of burning with that inspiration. I don't know if you know that feeling where you can't even hold it in, you just want to tell everybody. And school was going to be starting in just 3 days, but I knew that I wanted to get these sent out right now. And so I pulled out my old list of publishers, kind of looked at them and went, okay, let's send, you know, to 3 publishers. Let me find 3 publishers. And so I researched on my list and found 3 publishers that released on the national market because I didn't want my book just stuck in Utah. And I prepared manuscripts and sent them in. I went to school. And I got my first rejection letter, and I was like, that's awesome. And it was the same company that had rejected my other one a while ago, so I thought, someday you'll regret that. And then I got my second rejection letter, and I thought, well, that's nice. And it was the nicest rejection letter I'd ever gotten. Like, they even added this part on the bottom where they were like, you are a good writer, just, we don't want this, but you're a good writer, like, send something else in another time, because you are good. So that was really nice. And then so I was down at Snow College at the time. I graduated there a few years ago. Anyway, so I was there and I was doing homework. I think it was a Thursday night. Might have been Wednesday. Maybe I'm dramatizing it. It was a Thursday night, everyone. A night just like tonight. There was no snow. But anyway, so I was at the library, 3rd floor, where it was like the quiet study area. And I open up my laptop and I'm going to start doing homework. I really don't want to. I was supposed to write a paper, and of course it was due like the next morning. I didn't want to write it, but I'd put it off all week. And I decided I'd check my email first, procrastination. And I saw an email from the publisher, and I thought, do I really want to be told I'm an awful writer right before I have to write a paper? That might not be the best motivation. But I turned on my favorite song of the day, I opened it up, and I read it once and thought, that is the nicest rejection that I've ever gotten. Like, seriously, that's just so polite and nice. And so I was like, that's such a good experience, I'm going to read it again. So I read it again and went, wait a second, I'm not seeing the words like sorry or don't want it. And so I read it a 3rd time, and that's when it dawned on me, they want it, like, what do I do now? And so, you know, I start kind of like hyperventilating, and like there's people like bent over biology books, and they're kind of looking at me like, what's your problem? We're trying to study, this is the quiet area. And so I closed my laptop, threw it in my backpack, ran outside, and started screaming at the top of my lungs, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing. It was like hugging trees. And luckily, I had a roommate wandering by who saw me and helped guide me back home, because I probably wouldn't have made it otherwise. But it was like the coolest thing. And that's kind of my story of finally getting an acceptance. And from that point, the publishing process honestly becomes a bit of a blur. But it takes about a year before your book's actually going to hit the shelves, and there's a lot to do in the meantime. You thought you'd edited like a million times before, not even. Like, it got to the point where I almost got sick of reading my own book. Because you read it so many times, and you go over it so many times. And one of the weirdest things was the cover. Because I'd always been told, you never have any say in the cover, so never visualize your cover, because it'll just break your heart someday. And I'd never visualized a cover because I didn't want my heart broken. And so I got an email from the designer who was like, hey, what do you want for the cover? And I was shocked. And the reason I tell you this is because that's one of the perks of going with a smaller publishing company. They really do want to listen to you, partly because they don't have a huge staff, and so they want more input. But it's one of the perks of working with a smaller publisher. And of course, one of the others is your chances of being published are a lot greater. And all of these things kind of led me to realize that soliciting a publishing house in the beginning is what I wanted to do for my writing career. I wanted to start small and build my way up to these bigger publishers. Because the more you publish, the more willing publishers are willing to publish your stuff. Because they're like, hey, that means you know what you're doing. You obviously know a little bit about marketing. You know how to do a book signing. And you have this readership, this base of readers who are going to follow you. And so that's me singing praises of soliciting your own publisher. But it's definitely one of the ways that I think is a great way to get started in publishing, just because, again, you're starting small and you find a company that's willing to work with you. And really my only caution is make sure it's one that publishes on the national market, because you want your book to actually get somewhere. And to this day, I think the thing I'm most excited about is I have a fan base in Romania. It's so cool. And like, I've had like several invitations, come stay at my house and do a book signing, and it's really cool. So anyway, publishing it's really awesome. And really one of the biggest things that I like to say when I'm speaking about publishing is obviously it's possible. Because if a klutz like me can do it, I have faith that you guys can too. Anyway, so some things that you can do right now to help your chances of being published. Number one, and this is honestly my number one, the rest really they're all like equally important, but my number one is read. You need to make sure you're reading, and I know that's really hard when you're in school. It's definitely hard for me, as I understand. But reading is so important. Reading in the genre that you intend to publish, reading just for fun, whatever genre is your favorite, if it just happens to be a different genre, I guess. But reading is so important. For one thing, writing can sometimes be really frustrating, and you can wonder to yourself, why do I like the written word again? It stinks. I don't like it. And so reading beautiful literature will inspire you, and will also rub off in your own writing. And another important thing with reading is that it will familiarize you with the market. What's big right now? You know, you can find coming trends. You can start, you know, you'll be reading this scene and it's amazing. You can stop and ask yourself, why is it amazing? And that's how you could help improve and develop your own skills by using books that other people have put out. So I definitely recommend read, even though it can be really hard and life's crazy and busy and you barely have time to do your own writing, but reading is really, really important. Some of the other things you can be working on, one that I failed at miserably, and I wish someone would have told me to be working on this right now, was online presence. Establishing your online presence. That was something that I have a Facebook page. But getting established as a blogger, I'm terrible at blogging. This is why I wish someone would have told me it was important. But if you have a blog, make sure that you're being consistent. If you don't have a blog, seriously think about starting a blog. Review books that you read. Talk about other things too, of course. I mean, you don't want it to be just about books. But if you can start getting involved in this industry of reviewing books, talking about books, you're going to find yourself making acquaintances and friends on other blogs that also review books. Often, you'll run into other authors that way. And if you're really consistent in your blogging, you can even start emailing authors and saying, hey, I would be interested in reviewing your book. And they'll send you a free copy of their book, as long as you review it. And so it's a really good way to start getting, rubbing shoulders, even if they're virtual, with other authors, agents, and just other fans of books. If you can get a readership that loves your blog, don't you think they would like buy your book when it came out? It makes sense. I wish someone had told me that. But so an online presence, start working on that now in any little way that you can, whether that's even just finding a list of blogs to follow. Start getting involved, become a really, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm an English major, you wouldn't know it. I can't speak it, I write it. But becoming a follower that's really frequently on a blog, make friends with those bloggers, and you can start networking with these people, and it will really give you a head start when you start publishing. So that's something I'd really recommend. Another is, of course, keep writing. The difference between an author and a writer is an author finishes. So, aspire to be authors. It's really easy to start a story or to start a novel, but finish it. Follow it through. Keep going. And even if you get a little bit stuck, that's okay. Start writing about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it will start, like the juices will flow. It's weird, but it works. And you'll find yourself able to write and get past this writer's block, because writing is so important, and you need to be finishers if you're going to be published. And also get involved in contests. Scribendi. We still have a few days. If you're students, get involved with Scribendi. Hurry and send something in. It's an awesome opportunity. And those are the kind of publications and contests, you can put those on in a cover letter, when you send in a resume. Those are publications, and they'll really give you a leg up when you're trying to get published. So get involved in different things like that. And one of the last things is really just start thinking about what are your goals as a writer. Do you want this to be your career? If so, you need to be reading up on publications. Read about the trends that are going on. Really make that a goal that you're going to be knowledgeable about what's going on in the publishing world. it's a really interesting time to be in publishing. Things are changing very rapidly. Major companies are shrinking, and many are turning to this online ebook publishing. So there's just a lot of exciting things happening, but a lot of things that if you have old information going into it, that could be the thing that sinks you. So if this is going to be a career and something you seriously want to do, make sure that you're reading up on this and you understand the market and what's going on in publishing.